Good afternoon, everybody, from the CENELEC Management Center in Brussels, and welcome to our third webinar for standard drafters. Today, we will look at the editing and procedures at the inquiry and formal vote stages. My name is Sophie Vandrich. I'm an editor in the publication unit at CCMC, and I will present this webinar today with my colleague Frédéric Dufour.
Hello, my name is Frédéric Dufour and I'm here today to speak with you about the inquiry and formal vote stages.
Throughout the webinar, you can use the question and answer panel to interact with us. You can share your thoughts and experiences that could come up during the presentation. If there is time left at the end, we will answer to some of your questions. A recording of the webinar and the question and answers will be published online. The main topics that we will cover today are the editor's role at the inquiry stage and at formal vote stage. And to illustrate this, we will also list 5 typical issues that require our intervention. To make things easier to follow today, we have decided to use a basic flowchart. It describes the main activities of an editor when a document is allocated to him for editing. The first step we are going to look at is the preparation of the inquiry. As soon as we receive the inquiry draft from the technical committee, our clock starts ticking. We have indeed 5 weeks in total to perform some various administrative tasks and of course the editing of the document. I will start first with the administrative task. A reference number is first allocated to the draft. Then we check the data encoded in our database. We check that the data encoded in our database, that it corresponds to what we have received. Is this the correct document? Is this the correct track? Are the electronic figures available in a separate file for some inquiries? The text is then allocated to an editor, and then we calculate the target dates for each step in the process. For example, deadline for editing, deadline for translation, launch and closing dates of the inquiry. And finally, we update our database. Once we have updated our database with the correct target dates, you will be able to find on the next day the information on projects online. You will see there the allocated editor's name, his email, his phone number, in case you need to contact him. I will come now to the editing task, our first priority. The editor performs an in-depth editing at the inquiry stage. The editor has to check whether the document has been drafted according to the internal regulation part 3. The editor has to style, format and edit the document as is necessary to comply with internal regulation part 3. One important thing we also have to do is to create an XML version of the document. And in order to create the XML version, we use a work tool known as Xstyle. These Xstyle tools help us with our editing. For example, it helps to clean up the document, and it highlights problems within the text, such as outdated or invalid standard references, incorrect cross-references, and broken URLs. While doing this, we try to keep a high level of consistency, accuracy and attention to detail, and we try to respect the given time frame for our process. And finally, we might have to contact the TC secretary in charge if there are some problems with the draft. Frédéric will now talk more in detail about 5 typical cases where we might have to contact you.
Thank you, Sophie. So please let me intervene now to talk to you about editing mistakes regarding the editing that are occasionally made in the drafts and final drafts that are submitted to us. Please pay attention to these 5 following editing interventions that we most commonly need to carry out in our daily work. The first one concerned the fact that no requirements, recommendations, or permissions are allowed in the European forward, in the introduction, in the scope, in notes, nor in examples, in our drafts and final drafts. The second most important editing intervention concerns the fact that no hanging paragraphs are allowed. You may check out our previous webinar where this issue was covered. Basically, a hanging paragraph is a paragraph that is contained in a clause or subclause, but not in one of these subdividing subclauses within the clause or subclause. And indeed, no hanging paragraphs are allowed because all paragraphs need to be may need to be cross-referred to in the deliverable. Please be careful also about informative references that are wrongly reported as normative in clause 2. And also, please beware that all tables, figures and formulae have to be correctly numbered. Please be aware that the numbering mustn't follow the clause numbering of the document. Finally, please use the right template for your Annex CEA or ZZ. Annex CEA if your draft is a CEN draft, Annex ZZ if your draft is a CENELEC draft, if your deliverable is candidate harmonized. An Annex CEA or ZZ is this annex which concerns the essential requirements that are respected in an EU directive or regulation in a given draft. Please, Sophie.
Thank you, Frédéric. Step 2. We have now the translation and launch of the inquiry. Once the editor has done the editing, a stable delivery of the reference version is provided to the translator via eTrans. If the document is candidate harmonized under an EU directive or regulation, it is sent to the consultant in charge by the start of the translation phase. The translation period is 8 weeks, but the translators may request an extension depending on the length of the document. We will of course notify you if an extension is requested. During the translation period, some resubmission uploads for the translators may be possible if the TC secretary has spotted some minor changes to be done in his draft. Let's look now at the launch of the inquiry. At the end of the translation period, the editor encodes in our database the title and scopes of the translated version, and he circulates the reference version and translated version with the official title, pages and forms for the inquiry onto eTrans for CEN drafts and onto the FTP platform for CENELEC drafts. If one or both additional language versions are not available within the time frame foreseen for translation, we will automatically launch the procedure in the available language version. Step 3. We have now the provision of the inquiry report. First, some key points regarding the inquiry votes. The inquiry gives the members an opportunity to conduct a national inquiry, allowing all relevant stakeholders and public authorities to submit comments in order for the member to formulate a consolidated national vote. The inquiry lasts 12 weeks. Members can request extension of up to 4 weeks. The inquiry is a weighted vote and members have to reply either yes, no or abstention. Members also vote on the implementation dates. They are permitted to submit comments, both technical or editorial. And since January, 3 European organizations representing consumers, ANEC, Environmental Interest ECOS, and Social Interest ETUC, have now the right to submit an opinion on the draft European standard. And finally, depending on the outcome of the result, the TC can decide to skip the formal vote and go straight to publication. But this, we will discuss this a few slides later. We are now going to talk about the closure of the inquiry and the compilation and circulation of the comments. On the deadline of the inquiry, CCMC will provide you with the results of the inquiry and the comments. For CENELEC, the inquiry report is available 24 hours after the closure of the inquiry on 2e-trans. For CENELEC work, the inquiry report is made available on Monday after the closure of the inquiry via an automatic email. Please bear in mind that once the ballot is closed and the outcome made available, it is not allowed anymore to modify the results. But this may be now the time for you to take a decision. Please let me hold the floor to my colleague Frédéric.
Thank you very much, Sophie. So now the decision you may have to tackle is whether or not a formal vote will take place. Indeed, once the enquiry has finished, the enquiry voting report and the compiled comments, together with the assessment of the consultant, if there is one, are circulated to the TC members. The TC then analyzes the comments that are received, and depending on the results, the TC may decide either to skip the formal vote and go directly to publication, or to make changes to the draft and continue to the formal vote. So the first possibility is to skip the formal vote. The TC may only decide to skip it if the results of the vote during the enquiry are positive, and if once they have examined the comments received, they agree that no technical changes need to be introduced to the enquiry draft. In order to skip the formal vote, the TC needs to take a decision by simple majority, and in the case of a CENELEC draft, also 71% of weighted votes. In the case of a CEN draft, there have to be 55% positive votes, and which represent 65% of the whole population. And there has to be a TC decision by simple majority, and if the formal vote is skipped, the editorial comments received during the enquiry will be dealt with by the CCMC editor, and the CCMC will then receive the finalized text for proofing before translation at publication stage. And the TC will also receive the final publication. But please bear in mind that if the formal vote is skipped, no technical changes may be implemented to the enquiry draft afterwards. Now the second possibility is to continue to the formal vote. The TC will proceed with a formal vote if the assessment from the consultant is negative. And in case of a formal vote, the enquiry comments will have to be resolved, and the draft will have to be updated and finalized before it is submitted to CCMC. Please bear in mind that in that case, if you continue to the formal vote, technical changes to the enquiry draft are still possible. And now, please let me tackle the resolution of comments from the inquiry. Each CEN enquiry comment has to be analyzed and decided upon by the CEN TC in charge. This may be carried out during a comment resolution meeting of the TC, or the TC can decide to delegate the resolution of comments to the level of a working group. The decision on each comment has to be recorded in the comments table. Please bear in mind that it is important that technical committees use the very same enquiry draft that was edited by CCMC. Indeed, the TC needs to use this text to implement the changes and updates before resubmitting this draft for final vote. Otherwise, all the styling and editing work made at enquiry stage will be lost. Using the edited enquiry draft provided by CCMC will make the editing work at formal vote stage faster and easier. You'll find the edited draft version available on eTrans, on the FTP platform, or on projects online. Regarding the following step, this concerns the editing of the final draft and the votes. Please be aware that the formal vote final draft is delivered from the TC for CEN as a zip folder onto eTrans with the same files as for CEN draft. For CENELEC, the final draft has to be attached to an email sent to production@cenelec.eu. Regarding the processing and editing of the final draft, please let me show a picture of me to tell you that CCMC's tasks within the following 2 weeks are identical with the ones at enquiry stage. Indeed, they include the same administrative and editing tasks, which means the final draft is edited as Word, Acrobat PDF, and XML. As I said just now, the tasks are just similar as for enquiry, but please be aware of the following facts. Now, at formal vote stage, there won't be any systematic translation period before the formal vote for ENs. Indeed, there is no more translation period prior to the formal vote for enquiry drafts that was submitted to CCMC after the 30th of July 2016. Please note that it's possible, however, for translation members to introduce a specific request during the enquiry stage in order for a 6-week pre-vote translation period. This is possible for ENs. Regarding technical specifications, there is an 8-week translation period because technical specifications are submitted to a vote on TS. There is no novelty for technical reports. There is still no translation period for prior to the vote on TR. Now, please be aware that the formal vote is launched, which means that by that stage CCMC circulates the reference version and forms for the formal vote, properly speaking, onto eTrans for CEN final drafts and onto the FTP platform for CENELEC final drafts. The period for the formal vote lasts 8 weeks. Please be aware that no extension will be allowed during the formal vote period. The vote on TS and TR lasts 12 weeks. In the case of candidate harmonized deliverables supporting EU directives or regulations, these will be sent to the consultant in charge by the start of the formal votes. And please, you can see here on this slide the area on each round in which the CEN final drafts are being delivered. Please be aware that in the case of votes on TSAs and votes on TRs, the voting period will last 12 weeks. Finally, the last stage is the provision of the voting results. Just after the closure of the vote, CCLC immediately prepares the voting report and circulates it to members for information. Onto e-trans for send homegrown documents on the first working day just after the closure of the vote, or attached to an automatic email for CENELEC homegrown documents. This takes place on the Monday that follows the closure of the vote for CENELEC homegrown documents. The comments are compiled and inserted by CCLC at the end of the voting report, but please be aware that this is to be continued. Please check out our next webinar on the 29th of November. Our next webinar will concern editing and procedures at the proofing and publication stage. Please bear in mind that we're also here to offer you our support. If you plan a meeting in our CENELEC Meeting Center, we are here to give you support. Please do feel free to contact us at production@cenelec.eu, or please contact the editor in charge. Editors may attend meetings to provide editorial advice or answer questions on standards drafting or procedures, and we're just upstairs. Please get in touch.